Good morning to all the students. So yesterday we have discussion on the topic called as the virtual base classes, where we have seen what is the disadvantage of this virtual base classes, what is the disadvantage of the multipath inheritance we have, and what are the solutions that we have for that problem. And the two solutions that we have discussed are using the scope resolution operator and using the virtual base classes, right. So in today's class we are planning to discuss on this abstract classes, right. So the abstract classes, will discuss what these abstract classes are, and these abstract classes makes use of a concept called as pure virtual functions, right. Similarly, we will discuss the concept of pure virtual functions. Before discussing the pure virtual functions, we will discuss the virtual functions, why do we require these virtual functions, and we will also discuss one more topic called as upcasting, right. And finally, we will discuss the pure virtual function definitions, and then we will end up the topic by discussing the advantages and disadvantages of the inheritance. So this is how we have planned for today's session. So please concentrate, this is one of the important topic, and you get lot of questions from this abstract classes, pure virtual functions and virtual functions. So you may get some simple questions only, but you should understand the concept, right. So coming to the abstract classes, we know the class, we know the meaning of class, right. So what is a class? Can anybody define what a class is?
Blueprint, sir.
It is a user-defined data type.
Super. It is a user defined data type, and somebody says that it is a blueprint. Anything is correct only. Can anybody tell me what do you mean by this abstract?
Hidden, sir.
Hidden, right. Super. Right. You might be heard of this term abstract in the abstract data types, right, ADTs, which you have studied in the data structures concept. So abstract means the implementation part will be hidden from the user. So most of the things that we come across in our daily life will be abstract only. For example, the mobile phone which you are using, as an end user you might be knowing how to make a call, how to end a call, how to send a SMS, how to send a WhatsApp message, and how to play a video, all these things you know. But internal implementation, how that video file is going to play, when you just click on that video file, it is going and opening the corresponding software, that is VLC player or some media player will be opened, and how it is going and how it is opening and how it is playing, all these things, as a end user you are not worried about all those things, right. Similarly, you know that you just enter the number of your friend and then you click on this green button, right. Then it will automatically call your friend and you can have lot of conversation over it, right. So what internally is happening, we are not bothered. We means the end user is not bothered about what internal details are there inside that function or that item or whatever it may be, right. Similarly, if you take anything, a remote control for your TV or a microwave oven, washing machine, air conditioning unit, everything you come across in your daily life will be in the abstract form only. So you don't know what is happening inside, you just know how to work with it. In the similar manner, the abstract, a simple term that can be given for this abstract is it is hidden. It is hidden. That means instead of hidden, we can say it as it is not given, right. So this is how the abstract classes are defined. We will see what these abstract classes are, what classes can be categorized under this abstract class, that everything we will discuss, right. But this is how this is what we get from this two words. A class, we know the class is a blueprint or it is a user defined data type, and abstract means it is something that is hidden from the user or it is not given, the definition is not given. So such type of things are called as abstract. So by combining these two terms, I came to know that the classes will have some hidden part, or the classes will have some non-defined items that particular classes we call them as abstract classes, right? So let us go into the discussion of these abstract classes. Listen, so the abstract class is a class which contains at least, this is very important, right, at least one pure virtual function in it. Let us see, forget about what this pure virtual function is. We'll discuss all these things, but initially, to have some idea on the abstract classes, what you will say is, it is a class but it contains at least one pure virtual functions. We will see one by one what virtual function is and what pure virtual function is. All these things we will discuss. But remember that an abstract class is a class which consists of at least one pure virtual function in it. So, and the abstract classes, as I say, that these abstract classes are the classes which are hidden from the user, that means which are having some non-defined items inside the class, right? So whenever we have some non-defined items, these particular classes, when we extend these classes, right, abstract classes can also be extended. What do you mean by extension? What do you mean by extension? Or reused? In C++, how can you reuse some code?
Using user-defined functions, sir.
No, what is the concept behind the reusability? I have given the
Inheritance.
super, right, inheritance. This is what we are studying from the last 3 classes. So inheritance is a concept which is used to implement the reusability. So whatever code is there, you can reuse it, right? So these abstract classes, they will provide some non-defined items. The body is not defined inside it, but these classes allow us to reuse the code. That means it will allow us to inherit it, or we can create a subclass from these abstract classes. So when you create a subclass from these abstract classes, or when you inherit these abstract classes, you have to define those functions which are not defined inside this base class, right? So if you draw the diagram like this, let me have a diagrammatic representation. I have a base class and I have the derived class. So when can I call this base class as an abstract class? If it contains at least one pure virtual function, pure virtual function. I know what this abstract is, therefore assume that the body of these virtual functions is not defined, that is called as a pure virtual function. So where we can define the body of this pure virtual function means in the classes or in the subclasses which you have inherited from this abstract class. This is abstract class. So these abstract classes contains one function which is not having any definition. It's not only restricted to one function, you can have any number of pure virtual functions. So by this time you might have known what this pure virtual function is. So what do you mean by pure virtual function?
A function without any code inside it, without any definition.
Super, right. A function without any body or a function that is not defined is called as a pure virtual function. So there exists some syntax to define this pure virtual function that we will discuss, but a pure virtual function is a function that does not have any body, right? So if it does not have any body, when I inherit this abstract class to create a subclass or to create a derived class, the pure virtual functions which does not have the body in the abstract class should have definition in the derived class. So the definition of the pure virtual functions in the base class will be given inside the derived class. This is the point you have to understand, right? So abstract classes consists of pure virtual functions. I know that the pure virtual function does not have any implementation in the base class. So where this definition of this pure virtual function should be there means you have the derived classes from these abstract classes, abstract class. So in the derived class you should define the definition of these pure virtual functions. So this is the point which is very, very important. Right. So what happens if I don't define this function? Can anybody tell me what happens to if I don't define this function, or I don't give any body to the pure virtual function in the derived class? Since it has been
It will also
derived,
become an
it
abstract
also
class.
becomes the abstract class. Why? Because since the derived class has been derived from an abstract class, it consists of a pure virtual function. When we derive the class, the pure virtual function is also present inside the derived class. Since here also you are not giving any body to this function, it also becomes the abstract class, right? So any class, whether it is a base class or a derived class or a derived class, whatever it may be, if the derived class or if the class consists of a function with no definition, such type of classes are called as abstract classes. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So classes inheriting an abstract class must provide, it is must, you should provide it, right, must provide the definition to the pure virtual function. What happens if it does not provide any definition to this pure virtual function? Means, as we have discussed, that particular class, that means the derived class also becomes the abstract class. So these are the few important points you should keep it in mind regarding these abstract classes. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Now we will
Yes,
see the
sir.
characteristics of the abstract class. We will see what pure virtual function is, what virtual functions are, why do we use these virtual functions, everything we will discuss, but basically we will have an idea of this abstract class and then go into the concept, right? And very, very important characteristics of these abstract classes, right? Since one of the function that is present inside the abstract class is a pure virtual function which does not have the body, the C++ does not allow the abstract classes to be instantiated. What do you mean by instantiation? This term is very important. Instantiating a class, very, very important. What do you mean by this instantiation?
Creating an object.
Super, right. Creating an object for a class is called as instantiating a class. So abstract classes cannot be instantiated. That means you cannot create objects for these abstract classes, right? So in the earlier example, the base class is an abstract class. Why I am calling this as an abstract class? Why? Because it is having a pure virtual function. What is this pure virtual function? It is a function which does not have any definition. So where you are going to define the definition of these pure virtual functions? In the derived classes. All these things we know, right? So this is the base class or this is the abstract class. Since it has the pure virtual function, you cannot create an object for this base class, right? If you generalize the things, you cannot create objects for the abstract class. That's it. A very important point, right? But how can I use that class? This should be the doubt that might have arisen in your minds, right? So if I am not going to create an object for the class, I cannot make use of the data members, I cannot make use of the functions that are declared inside the class. So what is the use of this abstract class? Means, though you cannot create an object for this abstract class, you can create a pointer for that class, you can create a reference for that class. We will see how we create a pointers and references in the next example, right? So objects are not allowed to be created for this abstract classes, but you can create the pointers, you can create the references of this abstract class. This is very important, right? First and foremost important point regarding abstract class is you cannot create objects for the abstract class, but you can create the pointers and references to the abstract class. So by making use of the pointers and references of the abstract class, you can make use of the data members and the member functions of the abstract class. This is very important, right? Next, the second point is, what is an abstract class? I told that the abstract class is a class which consists of at least one pure virtual function, right? Does it mean that it does not have any normal functions? No, right? So an abstract class can also have the normal functions and variables along with the pure virtual function, right? So abstract class can have the normal functions as well as the data members along with at least one pure virtual function. This is another important point we should remember. So abstract classes, why do we use these abstract classes? Means abstract classes are mainly used for the upcasting. We'll see it in the in the next slides what upcasting is, right? So that here he has given, the author has given some important information regarding this upcasting, so that its derived classes can use its interface. Can anybody tell me what do you mean by interface? What do you mean by interface? I am not asking about the C++ interface. Just tell me what do you understand by the term, generalized term, interface?
Platform.
Yeah, super. It is something similar to that of a platform, right? Or which is readily available and which can be readily used by making some modifications, right? So these abstract classes are used for upcasting so that its derived classes can use its interface. It means it is nothing but the abstract classes interface, right? So classes, next point, classes inheriting an abstract class must implement all pure virtual functions, right? And the definition of abstract class is very, very important. It is called, a class is called abstract class if it consists of at least one pure virtual function, right? At least means minimum. It can have 2 also, it can have 3 pure virtual functions, it can have 4 pure virtual functions, right? So don't get confused with the pure virtual function and virtual function, both are different, right? So a class can have 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on up to n pure virtual functions. And when we inherit such type of classes which are called as abstract classes, the definition should be given in the derived classes, otherwise they also become the abstract classes. This we have already discussed, right? And an abstract class can also have constructors. This is another important point. This is, an abstract class can have the constructors. Is it clear up to these characteristics?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now let us see what this upcasting is. Why? Because the abstract classes, the main purpose of these abstract classes is it provides the upcasting concept. We will see what this upcasting is. Can anybody tell me what do you understand by this term? We will discuss these things, but what do you understand by this upcasting?
Converting something to a higher position.
Super, super, right? Casting means it is something called as molding, or it is something called as conversion. You might have heard the term that typecasting in C. Typecasting means conversion of one data type into another data type is called as typecasting. Similarly, casting means you are going to convert something and you are going to convert it to its upper level. So that is called as upcasting, right? So it is, now it is clear, right? We have the base class and we have the derived class. Since this is the concept related to inheritance, I am taking this one, like base class and derived class. Can anybody tell me what is up and what is down, just for our understanding purpose?
Base is up, sir.
Base is up, sir.
Base is up and derived is down. Super, right? So what do you mean by upcasting? Now tell me.
Base class.
Right. We are making the derived class objects to make use of the pointers of the base class, right? So derived is something in the down level and base is something in the up level. So what we are doing is we are taking, or we are using the objects of these derived classes to make use of the pointers of the base class. That is the reason why we call it as upcasting. There is another term called as downcasting. What do you mean by downcasting? So we will make
Base
the
classes.
objects of the base class to make use of the pointers of the derived class. This is, that means we are degrading, or the base class should be there and we are making use of this derived class pointers to store the address of base class object. But in the upcasting, what we are doing, we are making the derived class objects to be stored inside the base class pointers, right? So this is what is upcasting is. We'll see it with an example, right? So whenever you have one particular term, you just try to explain it in your own words. So upcasting means you are casting, I know it is something like a conversion. Up means it is going to upper level, that is called as upcasting. Therefore something is converted to an upper level, that is called as upcasting. What is this something? So derived class is at the lower level and I am making the address of the object of the derived class to be stored inside the pointer of the base class. This is called as upcasting, right? So upcasting is using, is the definition. Here we can give it in two ways. Whichever is convenient for you, you can make use of the definition, right? Upcasting is using the superclass reference or pointer to refer to a subclass object. This is what I have told, right? You are making the subclass object to make use of the superclass reference or pointer. The other way we can define this upcasting is the act of converting a subclass reference or pointer into its subclass reference or pointer is called as upcasting. Both are same only, right? Here we have explained it in terms of subclass object and superclass reference and pointer. Here we are making use of the subclass reference or pointer and superclasses reference and pointer. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Here is an example of this upcasting. Right. Here I have taken a class called super and it consists of one private data member x and it consists of one function which is publicly defined called as function base, right? So in this I am just printing a statement called super function. And at this point I am creating a subclass from super which is publicly inherited, right? It consists of another data member called y. Since the sub has been derived from super class, what are the other members that the subclass might have? It consists of y because y is a direct member of this subclass. But since it has been derived, it also consists of x and it also consists of fun base also. Is it right or not? This is what inheritance
Yes,
is.
Yes, sir.
Right. And coming to our main function, what is this statement? It is a new statement we have used, right? It is a new declaration. We never gone through this thing. I think you have got some questions in the assignment related to this. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So how do you create an integer pointer?
Int star PTR.
Right, int star ptr. Super. Right. Now tell me, what is this statement? What is super?
Per class name. Class name,
sir.
sir.
This
Class
is
name.
object creation, sir.
It's not object creation. Be careful. Object creation means it is written like this: super obj.
Yes, sir.
But I have included this indirection operator in between this ptr and super. If I don't have this star, then whatever you said is correct. Ptr is the object of class super. Right. Now but I have added the indirection operator super star ptr, then ptr becomes the pointer to the superclass. Is it right? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
this
sir.
is how you create
Yes,
a
sir.
pointer to the class. Till now we never gone through this pointers concept, right? So similar to that of the creation of pointers for the fundamental data types like integer, float and char, we can also create pointers for the user defined data type. For example, structure. Can we create a pointer to a structure?
Yes, sir.
Super, right? You might have seen the concept of creating pointers to the structure in the data structures, linked list concept. There you will
Yes,
be
sir.
creating the pointers to the structures only. Here the structure is a user defined data type. Here the point you should remember, or you should keep it in mind, is pointers can also be declared for user defined data types. In the similar manner, you can create a pointer to the class which is also considered to be a user defined data type, right? So what does this pointer store? What does a pointer store? Anybody please respond.
The address.
Address, sir.
Super. The address of what? That is important. You always try to give only half answer. Address of what? For example, integer int star ptr. Ptr is going to store the address of what?
Integer,
Of
sir.
that integer, sir.
Super. Of another integer variable. Not of that integer. It is going to store the address of another integer variable. Now tell me in the same lines, tell me what is this ptr? What is it? What it is going to store?
It's going to store super class.
Right. It is going to store the address
Address of superclass.
of the variable to superclass. What do we call the variable for a superclass? What do we call a variable of a class?
Object, sir.
Super, object, right? So this ptr, since it is a pointer to a class called super, it is able to store the address of the object that belongs to class super. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now go to
Yes,
the
sir.
second statement. Sub. What is this sub? It is a subclass that I have derived from the super. And what is this statement? What does this statement do? The second statement?
Creating an object.
Super. That is what I am saying. You should always say the full statement. Creating an object is correct only, but creating an object of which class?
Subclass, sir.
Subclass, right? So here I am creating an object of subclass, and this is very important. This is where we are making use of the concept called as upcasting. So I have used an assignment operator. On the left hand side is a pointer to the superclass. On the right hand side I am accessing the address. What is this operand called?
Address operator.
Address operator, not operand, operator, right? So this is called as address operator. So I am taking the address of the object which is an object of subclass, and I am assigning that address to the pointer of the superclass, right? So this is what upcasting is, right? I am going to store the address of the subclass in the pointer variable of the superclass. That means I am converting the object, the address of the object, to be stored inside the superclass pointer. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Clear,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So forget about what
Yes,
is
sir.
the what will be the output of this particular program. All these things, forget about this. But you are able to understand the concept by these few lines. You are able to store the object or the address of the object of subclass inside the pointer of superclass. This is what is upcasting. And next, fourth statement, another important point, you should have the clear idea on this syntax. This is one new point you have discussed in this program, where you are able to create a pointer to the superclass, and this is another point you have learned in this program, where you are storing the address of the subclass object in the pointer of the superclass. And this is the third new point you should know in this program. What is this here? Right, this is a new operator which is nothing but address of operator, right? So this is super is a superclass, name of the class, and I am using the variable called ref. Ref is the reference, nothing but the reference, right? So this is the syntax of how you create a reference to the superclass. Pointers and references are something different, very slight line of difference is there, right? Have you ever heard of the concept called passing arguments to the function? In how many ways you can pass arguments to functions?
2 ways.
2 ways. Super. What are those 2 ways?
Call by value, call by reference.
Super. Call by value and call by reference. But somebody or in some textbook or some others, they give it as call by value and call by address. So forget about the call by value. My question is whether call by reference is similar to that of call by address, or is there any difference is there? Any idea? Yes or no? Not an issue if you don't know the answer.
There's a difference, sir.
There is a difference, right? But while discussing the concept of this parameter passing mechanisms in C programming language, we will simply, we means the teachers will simply say that the call by reference is otherwise called as call by address, therefore there is no difference. Like that we will keep on saying, but there is a very slight difference between this call by reference and call by address, right? So this is we'll see when time permits, we'll also discuss that concept also. What is the difference between call by reference and call by address, right? But at this particular point you just remember that this is how I create a reference to the class. Pointer is something different from the reference, right? And what is this I am doing here? This syntax is also very important. You are going to learn 4 new points in this program, right? What is this? Reference is equal to obj. What is obj?
Object of
subclass.
Object of subclass. What is ref?
Reference, sir.
Reference, right?
Reference to the
So
superclass.
here you have used an assignment operator, and you are storing the object, or you are assigning the object of the subclass to the reference of the superclass. And when you are making use of the reference, there is no need to use the address of operator. This is what you should learn here. There is no need to use the address of operator. Address of operator is only used in case of pointers, right? And this is not used in case of references. So you simply assign the object to the reference, right? And one more important point you have to observe here is, what is that you are doing? You are assigning the object to the reference of the superclass, where the object is the subclass. So you are assigning the object of the subclass to the reference of the superclass. Is it not upcasting, what we have discussed in the earlier slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Here in this program you might have confused why I have described this particular program. In this particular program I have not used the abstract classes concept. This program is especially discussed to make you understand how this upcasting is used, right? How this upcasting is done using programmatically. But at the end of this particular session we will discuss how these abstract classes are used and how we are going to make use of this upcasting concept to access the functions of the superclass or whatever it might be. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
these 4 points
sir.
are very important, and these are the new points which you have learned in today's class. How to create a pointer to a superclass, how to perform the upcasting using the address of object of the subclass to the pointer of the superclass, how to create a reference to the superclass, how you are going to assign the object of subclass to the reference of the superclass. All these 4 points you have learned, right? Now coming to the next one. So that's all about upcasting. Now we are going to discuss another important concept which is called as virtual functions. Virtual functions. Remember, this is not pure virtual functions, right? This is virtual functions. After discussing virtual functions, we are going to discuss the pure virtual function, right?
Yes, sir.
So can anybody tell me what do you understand by this pure virtual function? We know what function is, but we should know what virtuality is. Right. So no worries that virtual functions are something which facilitates the programmers to implement the concept of overriding. Very, very important concept. Overriding. Right. One of the most frequently asked question when you express yourself that you are very familiar with the object oriented programming concepts means the first and foremost, or it is the must and sure question you might be asked is, what is the difference between overloading and overriding? You have seen overloading, right? Function overloading and operator overloading. But what is this overriding? It is something different from the overloading. Overloading and overriding are different concepts, right? And as a CSE student and as a student which you are have learned this object oriented programming concepts, you should know the differences between the overloading and overriding, right? We'll see at the end, we will discuss, or else I will give it as the assignment question so that you can answer it, right? So the assignment questions you have written are good, and you have given lot of differences between whatever questions I have given, right? So that is what I am expecting, that you should learn something from the internet, right? At least if you write those things, you might have some of the at least some snippets of the code or some snippets of the concept will go into your brain, right? So we'll see how we can proceed further after completing the syllabus, right? But this is also a very important question. Remember that you might be getting a question like differentiate between the function overloading and overriding, right? Even in my interview questions, when I attended this JNTU Kakinada interview, I got the question, same question, what is the difference between overloading and overriding, right? The interview panel member is so talented, and he is from IIT, I think, right? He never gets satisfied with my answer. He wants me to get he wants me to get confused by my answers, right? So this is the importance of this overloading and overriding, keeping aside all these things. So let us move into our virtual functions concept. Remember one thing, that virtual functions are used to implement the concept of overriding. That's it. This is very important. So coming to the definition, the virtual function, so this is a function where we are making use of a keyword called virtual, such that the function becomes the virtual function. Very simple, right? How do you convert the functions into virtual functions? Means by making use of a keyword called virtual, right? So a virtual function is a member function in the base class that are expected to redefine in the derived class, right? So whatever definition, can now tell me whether the virtual function consists of definition in the base class or not. Anybody
No,
please?
sir.
No, it is not the correct answer. So don't get confused with the virtual functions and pure virtual functions. Right? Pure virtual functions does not consist of the definition in the base class. The definition of the pure virtual function should be defined inside the derived class. That is what the pure virtual function says. But virtual function says that it consists of the definition in the base class, but these virtual functions are expected to have redefined in the derived class. So whatever functionality you have in the base class, you are expecting that those base class that definitions of the functions must be redefined inside the subclasses or derived classes. This is what is called as virtual functions. So here also the same concept, you have the base class and you have the derived class, right? And assume that there is a virtual class or virtual function, not class, sorry. So you have a virtual function inside this base. What is this virtual function? It is a member function only, where you have defined its body also. But since it is defined as a virtual function, you are expecting, or it is somewhat mandatory, that you should redefine this body of the virtual function inside the derived class as per your requirement. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand the difference
sir.
between the pure virtual function and virtual function? The first and foremost difference is pure virtual functions does not have definition in the base class, but virtual functions have definition in the base class. Second point, pure virtual functions definitions should be defined inside the derived class, and the virtual function definition should be overwritten or redefined inside the derived class. So once you have a member function, listen carefully, once you have a member function like this and it is present inside the base class, and when you redefine this when you redefine the body of this member function in the derived class, that concept is called as overriding. So this is what we are doing in the overloading also, sir. Have you got this doubt? Overloading means you are giving some different
Yes,
definition in the derived classes or subclasses, right? But the difference between this overriding and overloading is the member function signature should be same in all the derived classes. What do you mean by signature? Can anybody tell me what do you mean by signature?
Prototype.
Parameters.
No, whatever. Who told it as prototype? Right. Signature is otherwise called as function prototype. That is correct answer, not the parameters. Right. So overriding makes the functions to have the same signature in the base class as well as the derived class. Right. For example, assume that I have a function like this, int add int comma int. This is the signature I have inside the base class, or this is the definition I have inside the base class. So when I make use of the concept called as overriding, what I am saying, I have to change, I have to give some modifications to the body of the already existing function, that is add. So in the derived class also, I should have the same signature. That means it has the same signature. This is in the base class, and here I am writing the signature in the derived class. So int add int comma int. Right. So I give different statements in the body only. I don't want to change the head of the function. The head of the function denotes the signature, right? So whatever modifications you want to make in the derived classes, or whatever overriding you want to make, it should be done inside the body of the function only. You should never touch, or you should never change the signature or the head of the function. So you can observe here that the return type in base class is int, in the derived class is also int. The name of the function is add, and it is also add, and it accepts two parameters which are of integer data type. Similarly, in the derived class also, the add function accepts two parameters which are of integer data type. So you make modifications in the body, that is called as overriding. Now what do you mean by overloading? Please respond. What do you mean by overloading? Anybody, please respond.
Adding user defined
More than one definition or
Please be louder. Who is saying? I think the voice is breaking. Please be louder. What do you mean by overloading?
more than one definition or scope name, sir.
Right. You have to use the same function name. You have to use the same function name, but the definition is something different, right? So in overloading, we are putting the restriction only on the function name. So can I write like this? Int add int comma float. Does it mean the overloading?
Yes, sir.
Super,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So here I am making use of the same function name, but the parameters that are present inside this base class are having the int, and here I have it as int and float. So this is an example of overloading. So we have different signatures, but the function name should be same. That is called as overloading. But in overriding, you put restrictions on everything. You put restriction on the entire signature itself. So the signature of a function inside the base class should be same as the signature of the function that is present inside the derived class. But in overloading, you only put restriction on the function name. You should make use of same function name, but the parameters and the return type can vary. That is called as overloading. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. The difference is very important. That is the reason why I am repeating this again and again. Very important question this one is. Concept also, not about question. Forget about what you present inside the examination hall. That is different, right? But you should learn the concept. So coming to and this point we have discussed that functions are declared with a virtual keyword in the base class. That means virtual functions are declared by making use of virtual keyword, and these virtual functions are expected to be defined. Is it defined or declared?
Defined, sir.
Defined, right? So the base class, the virtual functions have some definition in the base class, and you are expected to change the definition or to modify the definition of these virtual functions in the derived classes, right? So that is done by making use of the virtual keyword. It's a straightforward concept. And third point, basically a virtual function is used in the base class in order to ensure that the function is overridden. This is important. This is what I have told, right? So you give the virtual function inside the base class, and you expect that function definition or the body of that virtual function to be overwritten or redefined inside the derived class. That overwriting of a function definition inside the derived class is called as overriding. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And coming to the next point, this particular concept, it is applied to cases where a pointer of base class points to an object of derived class. What is this concept called? What is this he is saying?
Upcasting, sir.
Upcasting, right? Here he is going to apply this virtual function concept whenever we are storing the object of a derived class inside the pointer of a base class. So derived class object is stored inside the superclass object. That means we are making use of the upcasting concept, right? And this is very important, Amma. They are mainly used to achieve the runtime polymorphism, right? Again, after making the conclusion of this chapter, we will discuss what this polymorphism is. Actually, the topic which we are dealing, the entire third unit, what are the topics we have dealt in the third unit? The first topic is overloading, right?
Yes, sir.
First
Yes,
part
sir.
is overloading, where we have discussed, even though in the syllabus it is not given about the function overloading, we have discussed what the function overloading is, and then we have concentrated more on the operator overloading, right? And then we have
Yes, sir.
came to the second part, which is called as inheritance, and from there we have discussed this abstract classes, what is this pure virtual functions, what are these virtual functions, and what this upcasting is, and everything is related to this runtime polymorphism only. So the entire topic, the third unit, is purely dedicated to the polymorphism concept. We'll again discuss these things, but in polymorphism I am giving a just brief introduction of this polymorphism. Polymorphism means one thing with different forms or with different implementations, right? The polymorphism in C++ is categorized into two things. One is the compile time polymorphism and another one is the runtime polymorphism. So in the compile time polymorphism, the actual definitions of the functions will be taken by the compiler or will be executed by the compiler during the compile time itself. That is the reason why we call them as compile time polymorphism. But in runtime polymorphism, the mapping up of the function call with the function definition is done at the runtime. Hence we call it as the runtime polymorphism. So the compile time polymorphism, next point, the compile time polymorphism is implemented by making use of the concept called as overloading. So you can make use of either the function overloading or operator overloading. Both of them, the overloading concept comes under the category of compile time polymorphism. But here the runtime polymorphism is implemented in C++ using virtual functions. This is one of the important Viva question. How can you implement the compile time polymorphism? Sir, by making use of overloading concept. Super. Then how can you implement the runtime polymorphism? By making use of virtual functions concept. Super, right? So runtime polymorphism is implemented using virtual functions, and the compile time polymorphism is implemented using, what is that concept?
Overloading, sir.
Overloading. Super, right? So the resolving of function call is done at the runtime. That is the reason why we are calling it as the runtime polymorphism, right? So where do you come across this polymorphism in overriding? Polymorphism means multiple forms. Multiple morphism forms. So same thing existing in different forms is called as a polymorphism. So in overriding, in runtime polymorphism, we are making use of this virtual concept, virtual functions concept. Now where is this polymorphism? Same function existing in different forms. Am I right or not? So in the base class I have a definition for this add, but in the derived class I am making the modifications for this add function, which is already defined inside the base class. So the same function add is being used in different scenarios or in different contexts. So that is called as polymorphism. But this time the function call is going to be resolved at the runtime. That's the reason why we call it as runtime polymorphism. Is it clear?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Right. So we will discuss this. What is your next hour?
CO, sir.
organization, sir.
Kantireka madam, right?
Yes, sir.
shall we complete this topic or shall I take another class in tomorrow? Or do you want me to complete this topic in this class only, so that I can call Kantireka madam and get permission from her? It is your choice whether we want to complete today or whether we want to complete tomorrow. That means I'm going to take an extra class if possible.
Okay, sir.
Shall we complete it today itself or shall I take a extra class on Saturday?
You can complete, sir.
Okay. Then wait for just 1 minute so that I can call madam and inform the same.
You are now muted. అలాగే థ్యాంక్ యూ బయటికి సౌండ్ పెట్టకూడదు. You are now unmuted.
Right. So is my voice clear?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So that is all about the virtual functions. So there is no need to rush now. So we'll close it within 20 to 30 minutes. Right. So that is all about the virtual functions which we have discussed, and there are some rules for these virtual functions. Right. The first rule is virtual function can never be declared as a static functions. Right. What do you mean by static? You might have studied the concept of static variables, right? So when you declare a variable as a static, the value of that variable retains during the function calls. So that is the meaning of the static, and these virtual functions cannot be declared as the static functions. And the second point is the virtual function can also be a friend function of another class. Right, you know the concept of friend function. What is the purpose of friend functions?
It is not declared inside the class.
To access private and protected members.
Whatever the first point what she has told is also correct, but when somebody asks you what actually is the friend function, you should say that it is a function which can access the private data members of that class. That is what you have to say. So the primary purpose of the friend function is to access the private data members. So a friend function of another class can be a virtual function, and similarly whenever you hear the concept of this virtuality, remember that you can access them using the pointers or references. Right. So virtual functions should be accessed using the pointer or reference of the base class. Just now we have seen how to create a pointer for a base class, how to create a reference for the base class, how to assign the address of object to the pointer, how to assign the object to the reference of the superclass. All these things we have discussed in the upcasting, right? So virtual functions should be accessed using the pointers or references of the base class type to achieve the runtime polymorphism. As I told that we have two different definitions One is defined inside the base class and another one is defined inside the subclass. But which function should be invoked will be decided at the runtime. So this is the concept of runtime polymorphism. Do you know the difference between compile time and runtime? What are the various stages that are involved inside the execution of a particular program? Do you have any idea? You might have studied in the C programming language.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The program is run only after compilation.
Super, right. The program is run only after the compilation. During the compilation, whatever syntax errors are there, the user will be thrown those syntax errors, and he has to make necessary modifications to avoid those compilation errors, and then he has to run it, right? So that's all correct, but what are the different forms of files we have we can generate during this compilation process and runtime running process? Do you have that idea? So executing a program is not a single step process. It involves a lot of conversions of the given program. That means we call the source code, for example, let us take it as .cpp. .cpp is a source file. So when you start compilation, it is converted into a machine language. It is converted into an assembly language. It is converted into an extended source code. Then this extended source code is converted into an assembly code. Then this assembly code is converted into a machine code. Then it will convert it into object code. All these things, there are different steps. Just remember that the compilation or the execution of a program is not a single step process. That's it, right? So as you know the differences between this compile time and runtime. So when we have this runtime polymorphism or virtual functions, they should be accessed using the pointers or references of the base class only. Then only you can implement this runtime polymorphism, right? And this is very important point. As I told that, what should be the signature of the virtual functions inside the base class and inside the derived class? Are they equal or are they differ from each other?
Equal, sir.
They should be equal. They must and should be equal. So the prototype or the signature of the virtual function should be same in the base class as well as the derived class, right? And the next point, fifth point, they are also defined in the base class and overridden in a derived class. This is what virtual functions are. So from the first point onwards, when we start the concept of virtual functions, I am saying that the virtual function definition is present inside the base class, but in the derived class we are going to override it, right? So they are always defined in the base class. They means what is there? Those are nothing but virtual functions. So the virtual functions are always defined in the base class and overridden in a derived class. And remember, this is not mandatory. That means the overriding in the derived class is not mandatory. So it is not mandatory for the derived class to override or redefine the virtual function. In that case, the base class version of the function is used. This is very important, right? So you are expected, so when you make use of the concept of virtual functions, you are expected to have the redefinition of the virtual function in the derived class, but it is not mandatory. You should not, it is not a thumb rule that you always have to redefine the virtual functions in the derived class. So if you don't redefine the virtual functions, then automatically the base class version of the function is used, right? Is it clear? This point is also very important.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And finally, the last point is the class may have a virtual destructor, but it cannot have a virtual constructor. So you cannot have virtual constructors, but you can define a virtual destructor. This is some important point you should remember. So in this particular characteristics of virtual functions, you remember few important points, that is it cannot be static and it can be a friend function of another class, and virtual functions are always accessed using the pointers or references of that class, right? And next point is very important, that the signatures of the virtual functions should be same in the base class as well as the derived class. And another important point is, it is not mandatory that you always override the definition of the virtual functions in the derived class. So if you don't override it, then the base class version is used, nothing wrong in it, no compilation error you will get, right? And finally, you can have virtual destructors but not the virtual constructors. So you may get a question from this point. Somebody may ask you, or in Viva question you may have a question like this: can we have virtual constructors? The answer is no. But can we have a virtual destructor? Yes sir, we can have a virtual destructor. So that is all about the virtual functions. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So how
sir.
do you define the virtual functions? How do you define the virtual function? Very simple question, but don't think in a complex way, right? What is the keyword, or else I can say like this, then you will get the answer. What is the keyword that is used to declare the function as a virtual function?
Virtual keyword.
Virtual keyword, sir.
Simple answer, virtual. Virtual is a keyword which is used to declare a member function of a class as a virtual function. So what is the purpose of virtual function?
Overriding.
Overriding, super, right? And upcasting, to implement the concept of upcasting. Clearly saying these virtual functions are used to have or to achieve the runtime polymorphism. So there is a straightforward answer, right? You may be asked a question like, how do you implement the runtime polymorphism? What is the answer?
By using virtual functions.
Super, right? By making use of virtual functions. Can we have definitions of the virtual functions in the base class?
Yes, sir.
Yes or no? Any other answer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Abhiram?
Yes, sir.
Super, right? Even though we have the definition of the virtual functions in the base class, you are expected, the programmer is expected to make modifications or to redefine the definition of the function inside the derived class. What do we call this concept?
Overriding, sir.
Overriding.
Super, overriding, right? Does the signatures of the function should remain equal in overloading? Remember the just observe the question. Do we need to have the same signatures for the functions during overloading?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. Do we need to have the same signatures in the overriding?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Overloading is used for compile time polymorphism or runtime polymorphism.
Compile time polymorphism.
Right, super. Right. Runtime polymorphism is implemented using
Virtual functions.
super, right? So that is all about our virtual functions concept, and the next topic is pure virtual functions. We know what a function is, we know what virtual functions are, which have virtual functions are those member functions of a base class which have the definitions, but we are expected to redefine the definition of those functions. But what are these pure virtual functions? Previously, when we are discussing the concept of abstract classes, the abstract class means, what do you mean by abstract class?
They contain at least one pure virtual function.
Super. This
And
is a
pure
class.
virtual fun-
It is a class which consists of at least one pure virtual function. Remember, never get confused or never interchange these words. Pure virtual functions are different from the virtual functions. So when you have to define the abstract class, you should define it as it is a class which consists of at least one pure virtual functions. Now we are going to see what these pure virtual functions are, right? We know the purpose of virtual functions. They are used to override. They are used for the overriding concept, right? But what is this pure means? As I told that these functions will not have any definition. The pure virtual function does not have any definition in the base class. Then where can you write the definition, or where can we give the definition of these pure virtual functions?
In
In the
abstract
subclass,
classes.
sir.
No, it is not in the abstract class. Please don't get confused with these terms. In the derived class, you are expected to define the definition of the pure virtual functions. So we have this base class and I have this derived class. This is called as abstract class. AC stands for abstract class whenever it consists of pure virtual function. Right. So pure virtual function means that does not have any definition. So this definition of this pure virtual function is expected to be given inside the derived class. This is the same thing which I have repeated from the earlier discussion. Right. Don't get confused. Abstract classes related to pure virtual function. Pure virtual function does not have any definition, and the definition is needed inside the derived class. And is it mandatory to give the definition in the derived class?
Yes, sir.
It is mandatory, right? But does it give any error if I forget to define the pure virtual function inside the derived class?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Right. What happens if I don't define, or if I don't give the definition of this pure virtual function inside the derived class?
Subclass also becomes abstract class.
Super. The derived class also becomes the abstract class. Right. So let us see what these pure virtual functions are. Very simple concept. We know that the member functions can be declared as the virtual functions by using the keyword called virtual. So in order to make these virtual functions as pure virtual functions, I should use the syntax like this. That is, virtual, here up to this point it is virtual function, right? F is defined as the virtual function, but I should add is equal to 0 to the declaration. So for this virtual function declaration, I am just adding it the is equal to 0. Then that becomes the pure virtual function. So F is a pure virtual function. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So that
sir.
the definition is pure virtual functions are virtual functions with no definition. They start with the virtual keyword. Yes, I know this virtual keyword should be used for declaring the virtual functions, but they end with is equal to 0. Then we call it as a pure virtual function. Right. Now let us look at the example here. So I have a base class here. What is the name of the base class?
Base.
Base. What about this function? What is this function called as?
Pure
Virtual
virtual function.
Show.
It is not virtual function, it is pure virtual function. Right. What is the name of the function?
Show.
Show, sir.
Show.
So,
Since the function is starting with the function declaration is starting with a keyword virtual and it is ending with a is equal to 0, the show function is called as a pure virtual function. So it does not have any body inside the base class, and you are expected to write the body of this function inside the derived class. So this is how I am deriving the derived class from the base class publicly. And see here in the public section I am going to define the body of the show function. What is that I have written inside the body?
Implementation of virtual
Implementation of
functions.
virtual function.
Implementation of
Derived
virtual
class.
function in
Derived
derived class. This is the output I will get, right, when I execute this show function, right? Listen here. And one important point regarding this abstract class. Now tell me whether base class is abstract class or not.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is a base class base. Since it has one pure virtual function, this class can be called as abstract class. Am I right or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now the important point regarding the abstract class we have studied in the earlier discussion, that you cannot create an object for the abstract class. So you cannot create an object for this class base, right? But what are the things you can create for the abstract class other than the object?
Pointers.
You can create the pointer for the abstract class. And what is the other thing? You can create a reference for the abstract class also, right? So for abstract class, remember that you cannot create object, but it is you have a provision to create the pointer as well as the reference for the abstract classes. Very important point you should remember, right? See here, coming to the main part, what is this one? Base obj. What is that I am trying to do here?
Creating an object, sir, for abstract
Creating
class.
an object for base class base, which is an abstract class, but this is not supported in the C++ programming language. That is the reason why it will give a compilation error. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now
Yes,
what is
sir.
that I am doing
Yes,
here?
sir.
Accessing a pointer to a
No,
base
no, what is
class.
that? What is that I am doing here in the second statement?
A
Please.
pointer to the base class.
You are creating a pointer to the base class. What about the statement 3?
Creating an object for the derived class.
Super. I am creating an object for the derived class. Now what is this one? What is the concept that is there inside this one?
Upcasting, sir.
Store
Upcasting,
upcasting.
Upcasting, right? I am storing the address of the derived class inside the pointer of the base class. This is called as upcasting, right? So from the starting point onwards, we are keep on saying that the abstract classes are used to implement the upcasting concept. This is called as upcasting, right? Now here look at this statement, b arrow show. Why do I use this arrow operator here? What is the purpose of this arrow operator?
Member selection operator.
Super. Member selection operator. But as I know that the member selection operator is dot operator, right?
Yes, sir.
But what about
Yes,
this
sir.
arrow? So this arrow is also a member selection operator only, but the dot operator is used with a combination of an object dot member variable or member function, whatever it may be. Let us call it as member. So object dot member means the object is a object of that particular class. But this arrow operator is also a member selection operator, but it is used with the pointers concept. Right? So if you have a pointer, I should use the arrow operator only. I cannot make use of the dot operator. So pointers make use of the arrow as the member selection operator. So this is how you should write it here. B arrow member, right? So that is what is B here? What is B?
Pointer
Pointer
to the
of
base
base
class.
class.
Pointer to the base class, right? Now I should use the arrow operator. Am I right or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So by using the pointer to the base class, I am accessing the member called show, right? So now tell me which show will be invoked. We have only one definition, that is in the derived class. So this particular show will be invoked, right? So why this particular the derived class show is getting executed means you are storing the address of the derived class object inside the base class pointer. Therefore it is pointing to the derived class. Therefore this is indirectly you are making use of the derived class object only, right? That is the reason why it will go and invoke the show present inside the derived class. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So that is all about the pure virtual functions, which where you can convert a virtual function using into a pure virtual function by just adding is equal to 0. And in the pure virtual functions you are expected to override the definition of the pure virtual, or you have to give the, it's not overriding, you have to give a definition for this pure virtual function inside the derived class. And when you have one pure virtual function, that is called as the abstract class. And when you have abstract classes, you cannot create objects for that abstract classes. You can only create the pointers and references for those abstract classes, right? So all these things you should remember. And the last topic which we are going to discuss, other than this we have only advantages and disadvantages, but we can just go through those advantages and disadvantages. But before that we have pure virtual definitions. Can anybody tell me what do you mean by this pure virtual definitions? Definition of a function. What do you mean by definition of a function?
Body of the function. is written.
Body of the function, which we can say that a combination of statements, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So we know pure virtual functions, but what are pure virtual functions which does not have any body, right? No body. But
Yes,
pure
sir.
virtual definitions means you are going to give one or two lines inside the pure virtual functions. Those are called as pure virtual definitions. So when you try to give one or two statements inside the pure virtual functions, then those statements are called as pure virtual definition. So what is the need of giving one or two statements inside these pure virtual functions? Means whenever you want to make few statements that are common to all the derived classes. For example, I have this base class and I derive it here. This is D1 and again I derive it here, D2. Let us take like this, D3. Right. So what I want to do is I should have a function, pure virtual function. I know that the pure virtual function does not have any definition, but I want to make all these D1, D2 and D3 to have some common statements. In such case, whenever you want to have the common statements in all the derived classes, you can add just one or two lines, not more than that, right? Very few lines you can add inside this pure virtual functions. Those statements which you have added to the pure virtual functions are called as pure virtual definitions, right? You might have got a doubt. What is the syntax for pure virtual function?
Virtual void
Virtual void
function name
function name
function
is
name
equal
equals
to
to 0.
0.
is equals to 0.
This is the syntax you have to give it for the pure virtual function. But how I can add one or two statements? For example, I want to print I want to add a statement like cout. This is pure virtual definition. This is the statement I want to have in all the derived classes D1, D2 and D3. But the syntax of the pure virtual function is saying that the base class should have this syntax only, which it starts with virtual and ends with is equal to 0. Right. Then how can I add one or two statements inside these functions, inside this pure virtual function? Means that pure virtual definitions cannot be added inside the base class. It will raise an error. Pure virtual definition should never be added inside the base class. Can I say that the virtual function or pure virtual function as a member function of the class or not?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what are the two ways of defining the member functions of a class?
Inside and outside the class.
Inside and outside. But here, according to the syntax of the pure virtual function, I am restricted that I cannot give the definition of the pure virtual function inside the class. So what is the other way?
Outside the class.
Right.
Outside
So
the
when you
class.
want to give some definitions to the pure virtual functions, you have to declare or you have to give those definitions outside the class only. That is one important point you should remember. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So coming to the pure virtual definitions, pure virtual functions can be given a small definition in the abstract class which you want all the derived classes to have. So whenever you want to give some information or whenever you want to have a common information to all the derived classes, you can make use of this pure virtual definitions. Right. But still you cannot create an object of this abstract class. It is clear that you cannot create an object for the abstract class, right? So you can create only the pointer and references to this abstract class. Even though you are giving some small definitions to the pure virtual functions, it remains pure virtual function only, and the class which has that pure virtual function remains the abstract class only. These are the points you should remember, right? So pure virtual functions are pure virtual functions only, and the classes which have the pure virtual functions will be abstract classes only, no doubt about it. Even though you give small definitions for them, for the pure virtual functions, they remain pure virtual functions and the classes remain abstract classes. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So the pure virtual function must be defined outside the class definition. This is what I have told, right? So you cannot give definitions for the pure virtual function inside the class. You should always give it outside the class. So if you define it inside, that means if you give some definition inside the class definition itself, the compiler will give an error. That is what we have discussed, right? Inline pure
Yes,
virtual
sir.
definition is illegal, right? Inline. Do you know anything about these inline functions? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
What are inline functions? Actually
Functions with the inline keyword.
Okay.
To
A
reduce the
copy is
function call.
placed in.
Okay, right. I think you know about this inline functions. Otherwise we will have as I told that once we complete the syllabus of the our syllabus part, then we will discuss some of these outline points, very important points regarding this C++ and OOPS. We will have some discussion on it, right? In that I will discuss about this inline functions also, right? So at the present point of time, you please forget about this last statement. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right. So I
Yes,
have
sir.
created a class base and I have created a pure virtual function, virtual void show is equal to 0, and see here, this is how you give the definition outside the class. So void base scope resolution operator show. This is how we define the member function outside the class, right?
Yes, sir.
So this
Yes, sir.
I am just printing, I am just giving one statement, see out pure virtual definition, and I have created a subclass derived which I have inherited from the base publicly, and I am giving the actual definition of the show inside the derived class. What is that? It has a cout statement, and the statement that is being printed is implementation of virtual function in derived class. And now you can see here, as I told that even though you are adding some definitions outside the class for the pure virtual functions, it remains the pure virtual function and the class remains the abstract base class only. So So you cannot create object for this abstract base classes. You are creating the pointer b to the class base, and here you are creating an object for the class derived, and I am storing the address of the object of the derived class inside the pointer of the base class. And now I am accessing this function using the base class pointer b arrow show. Now it will go and execute the body of the derived class. This is executed. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So now we are into the last topic or the last part of our inheritance, the advantages and disadvantages. So can anybody tell me what is the primary advantage of inheritance?
Reusability, sir.
Super.
Reusability, sir.
Reusability. So when we have reusability, as a programmer we have an existing code, and we have less efforts for the development, and we have less effort for the maintenance, and similarly you can have reliability. That means you can have reliable code, right? Let us go with point by point. So the primary advantage of this inheritance is it promotes reusability. So when a class inherits or derives another class, it can access all the functionalities of the inherited class. This is what we know about the reusability, right? And the second point is important. Reusability enhances the reliability. Reliability means we will get the reliable code which is having less errors, right? Why we say that the reusability is enhancing the reliability means, so once you write the base class code and you execute that base class code, if it is executed correctly, that means there are no errors inside the base class code, right? That means the base class code is already tested and debugged. So in such case, when you derive a subclass from the already tested and debugged base class, then you will have a clean code inside the derived class also, right? That is the reason why we are calling it as the reusability enhances the reliability. So you can depend upon the base class code which is error free, which is already debugged, right? So thereby you can create the derived classes which are more reliable. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Right,
sir.
because of this reusability you are making use of the existing code, so you have less efforts for the development and maintenance. This is what I have discussed, right? So inheritance makes subclasses follow standard interface. Standard interface means, for example, I have a class vehicle, right? So I can derive a bus from the vehicle, I can derive a car from the vehicle. Similarly, I can derive a tractor, let us say, from this vehicle. So the standard interface that is present inside the vehicle has been derived by the subclasses. So all the subclasses such as bus, car and tractor, they will have a standard interface with the vehicle. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Similarly, the inheritance helps the programmer to reduce the code redundancy. So you are not repeating the same code, right? In the first slide itself I have shown, for example, if the bus has a function called fare and the car is also having a function called fare, tractor is also having a function called fare. So if this inheritance concept is not supported, you have to write the fare functionality separately and redundantly in all the three classes. But since we have the concept of inheritance, I just write this fare function inside this vehicle. Only once I will write, and then I can inherit this fare to any number of subclasses. Thereby your code redundancy is reduced, and this is nothing but the code extendability, right? And similarly, the inheritance facilitates the creation of class libraries. You can create the libraries for this C++ using this inheritance very easily, right? Is it clear up to this point, advantages of inheritance?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So the last point regarding this inheritance and the third unit is What are the disadvantages of inheritance, right? So what the author is saying is the inherited functions, that means the functions that are present inside the derived class, works slower than the normal functions as there is a indirection, right? So for example, let us take a base class and let us take a function called fun, and let us take a derived class which is derived from the base class. So when I inherit this derived class, as we know that this function is also present here. This is just an assumption I am saying, right? So when you have a derived class object D, and when I invoke the function fun, it is going to invoke this base class function, right? It is going, that means the function that is invoked is present inside the base class. So there is an indirection, there is a movement of the control from this derived class to the base class. There is an indirection here. So the execution time for this inheritance, for this derived classes functions, inherited functions, will be somewhat slower. For example, I have another function 20, right? This is a pure function. The function 20 is purely related to derived. So if I execute this function 20, they will be executed directly. But if I execute the fun function, then it will go to the base class and then it will execute. Since there exists a indirection here, the execution of these inherited functions such as fun are slower than the normal functions. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
second
sir.
one, improper use of inheritance may lead to wrong solutions. So once you have the base class, it is already tested, but if it is not tested, assume that the base class is not tested and you have inherited the same base class to some 3 different subclasses. So whatever errors that are present inside the base class, they also persist inside the derived classes, all the 3 derived classes also, right? So it is you should be very careful in creating a common template or a common base class, right? So improper use of inheritance may lead to wrong solutions also. So the inheritance that you should use should be properly utilized. Similarly, the third disadvantage is the data members in the base class are left unused sometimes, right? For example, assume that there are 3 data members A, B, C inside the base class, and you have created the derived class, and this derived class consists of A, B, C. But sometimes you may not make use of all these variables inside the derived class. You might have used only A. So the remaining 2 data members, the memory that is allocated for the remaining 2 data members, that is B and C, will be wasted. So there may be a chance of wastage of memory when you make use of this inheritance concept, and that too in case when you don't make use of all the data members in the base class. So there is a wastage of memory. There is a probability, right? Not always the case, but there is a probability that there may be a wastage of memory, right? The last point, this is important. Inheritance increases the coupling. Coupling means it is the bonding. It increases the bonding between the base class and the derived class. So if you change the base class data, then automatically the derived class data will also be changed. So you make small change in this base class, that change will be transferred to all the derived classes. So n number of derived classes you have derived from the base class. All the n derived classes will be modified. So any change that occur in the base class will occur inside the derived class also. That is called as coupling. We call it as coupling, right? Other term we can call for this coupling is the bonding. So you have a strong bond between the base class and the derived class. So the purpose of inheritance itself is to create the bonding between the base class and the derived class. But you can explain it as a disadvantage also. Whenever you have a strong bonding between this base class and the derived class, you make small changes in the base class that will be automatically reflected inside all the derived classes, right? So these are the few disadvantages of inheritance. Is it clear up to this point?
Yes,
sir.
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right. So this completes our third unit, and the inheritance concept is completely covered with all the programming examples we have explained, and this completes the entire inheritance concept, right? And let me have the last slide. The constructors and destructors are never inherited and hence never overridden. So you don't have the constructors overwritten or inherited. You don't have the destructors that are overwritten, right? Similarly, the assignment operator is never inherited, but in the previous classes we have seen how to overload the assignment operator, right? You cannot inherit the assignment operator, but you can overload the assignment operator. So these are the two important points where you can come across its advantages in the Viva Voice questions, right? So this is all about the inheritance. Forget about this, we will tell it in the next class, not next class, in the extra classes, where I am going to tell you in the extra topics related to C++, right? So that completes our third unit, and from the next class onwards we will start with the fourth unit, right? Thank you one and all. Thank you one and all for
Yes,
your
sir.
extended class also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.